I am Sean Webb, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Rock Goddess, and I am rolling with Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Dave Meltzer, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Zach Poitras, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What is up, Superior Nation? Welcome back. I'm Trey Downs, and this is Your Superior Self. Thank you guys for joining. Man, oh man, I have a treat for you. I have Marla Freeze joining the show, and I have to say, we blow this episode up. Like, we leave everything on the table. We talk about everything that has happened in our lives, and we can relate to one another because we kind of are on that same wavelength. I think we're at that same level of consciousness where we want to help the most people that we can possibly help, but also enjoy our spiritual journey. And her book, I read it, and I just think there's so much value, and I think you guys should pick this book up and gift it to everyone that you know for Christmas. It is titled American Psychic, and what this book is about is Marla Freeze, her journey as a small town girl, and who develops her psychic gifts and builds her relationship with God on a synchronistic path. And this has everything that you're looking for in an inspirational story. I highly suggest, I demand that you pick this book up because I think it could be that transformational. And Marla is a beautiful soul, a beautiful person, and it comes through on this episode. And I'm just very honored to have her on this episode, on this show, and to be just connected with her on an entirely different consciousness level. And to prepare you for the awesomeness that's to come, here's a small clip of Marla.
If I could get into that television set in the corner of the room that my mother watched all the time, maybe she'd love me and not hurt me. So at a very young age, I thought, I'm going right into that television set. And maybe that'll make us have a relationship that will work. Well, it didn't, the way that normal people would say that you have a relationship. But it taught me so much because my heart was to help heal my family. And in turn, I healed myself. You know, we can't really fix necessarily other people. We want to, but we can't. We have to do the best we can.
Man. How do you drop the mic on a preview? Like, that's what I want to know. She just crushed it on a preview. That's how the entire conversation is. That is where her frequency is, the entire conversation. Her entire book is like that. If you guys want to check her out for yourself, which I highly recommend you do, go to marlafreeze.com. That is Marla Freeze, FREES.com. And you can find all of her media appearances. You can find information about her new book. You can contact her. You can do everything over there, which I highly suggest that you guys do. But before you head over there, I need you to go to yoursuperiorself.com. Leave me a message. Check me out. I want to know about you, how you're making out, and your journey with whatever, with spirituality, with consciousness, with development, with growth, with expansion, with learning. I want to know, what are you guys up to? How are you doing? You can follow me on social media at tdowns80 on Instagram, and I guess you can hit me up on Twitter. I don't really use it. It's just so I'm at Downs Trey at Twitter. It's just kind of, I don't know. I just don't. Maybe I should get more into Twitter. Change my mind. You go on Facebook, I have a nice little group over there that kind of showed behind the scenes about what we're doing with, what I am doing with podcasts and how we're inspiring others as an audience, as a community. Your Superior Self, go over there, like and follow, and you can see behind the scenes activities, methods that I'm utilizing in my life to help get rid of the crud, to help meditate, to help connect with my higher self, and maybe you can learn a thing or two over there as well. About how you can do that. Maybe see some of the books that I'm reading. I have a book group And speaking of that, I'm going to be assigning my new book next month on January 1 because it's pretty lengthy and I know everyone's pretty busy and is going to be looking for some new books for the new year. So I'm going to challenge them to read Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. And it's a very inspirational book. And be looking forward to sending that out to the group. But also want to say thank you to Marla Fries for introducing me to a physicist named Thomas Campbell, who is the author of the book My Big Toe, which is a theory of everything. And it's basically about philosophy, physics, metaphysics, quantum physics, everything that Tom has experienced or researched in his career, in his life, and what he helped build with Bob Monroe over at the Monroe Institute. And it's pretty phenomenal stuff. But I am excited to share all that with you on Your Superior Self page on Facebook. Follow that and like that and let me know your thoughts. But to get back to why we're here today, and that is to explore consciousness with the great and powerful Marla Fries.
Hi, I'm Marla Fries, and this is Your Superior Self.
Man, I'm like shaking to the core on that intro. Like, that is just amazing. Marla Fries, I am fired up on a whole nother level to talk to you tonight. Thank you so much for joining.
Oh my gosh, Trey, what a great intro. I appreciate that. It's really great to have a handsome young man say he's fired up. So let's talk.
Marla Fries, author of American Psychic. I read the book in like 3 days on the PDF version. I'm lucky enough to be able to get that from your media people. And I couldn't I couldn't stop reading it. Like, it's amazing. Your story is just so powerful. Like, thank you for sharing. I can believe that it was hard to write that. Like, it has a lot of some pretty personal information in there about you. And I mean, thank you for writing that. Like, it takes a lot of like bravery to put like things like that you went through on paper.
You know, Trey, that actually makes me feel very emotional that you really connected to that, because it is. I mean, it's one thing to sit down and write a book, but it's another thing to tell details, really details, deep details about your life. But that was the whole point of the book. Telling people, sharing with people, you know, I tell them my dumbass stories that I survived, that if I can survive them, they can get through them, right? But it's also, you know, the trauma that I suffered as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So that trauma is really kind of what many of us have to go through on some level, not necessarily the way that mine happened, but I do believe that trauma heightens our sensitivities, which down the road, because I didn't even believe in this psychic world necessarily or talking to the dead or any of that. But when it did hit me in the mid-90s, it was something that I had to look at because my soul was calling for it.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I love that. My soul was calling for that. Do you think that people, like, I'm just going to out of the gate 100 miles an hour right now. Do you think that all people have those psychic abilities or some type of?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I'm sitting here looking at you. We're doing a little bit of a Zoom, and I can see your head firing. I can see you coming up with lots of different ideas. I can see you in multidimensional levels. Also, I can see where you've had, you know, some anger issues. When I look at someone's head and I see a little red zagged bolt coming out of it, that means you had a conversation this morning or sometime during the day that, you know, you were filled with piss and vinegar. But I think that we all have this, and it manifests in different ways. You know, I work with scientists. And the scientists that are materialistic and all of that, they don't want to believe that they're psychic. They just want to believe that they're smart. But, you know, I've been working with Tom Campbell, this physicist, and he was a NASA defense guy, and now he's a consciousness expert. I've been working with him for the last 10 years, and he does a virtual reality model. And his whole thing is about reality equaling information. So we are literally looking at all of us being able to tap into this database, which a lot of spiritual people call the Akashic records. But for science people, it's the database.
Yeah.
And we can tap into it, and it's multi-level and it's just amazing. It's good PR for God.
How do you tap into that? Is it like, because I've been reading a little bit of Dr. What is his name? I'm looking at his book upside down. Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Who I've been trying to reach out to, but I'm reading his book, How to Be Supernatural. And he talks about going into like a meditative state and changing your brain waves from beta to alpha to theta to delta. And that's where like the delta, where you're in higher consciousness, and you're able to reach and access that void, that what does he call it? Quantum reality or whatever it is,
Sure.
like the records, right? Like you talk about.
Yeah.
Does that sound right? Like, is that something like you have, like, to get into that meditative state is where the key is?
Okay. So I didn't study with Joe, but I know Joe's work, and I deeply respect his work. And I know a lot of people that have been working with him for years, but I did it a different way. I ended up going to the Monroe Institute.
Man, I was getting ready to ask you that. I'm a big fan of Robert Monroe. I read all 3 of his books.
Well, yes. So if you've read his books, you understand that Bob Monroe, back in the 70s, developed the HemiSync program with Dennis Metternich and Tom Campbell, who I was just talking about. And they developed the HemiSync brainwave binaural beat system that Monroe has been using for years. So when you talk about getting into that theta and that gamma, that delta state, these binaural beats will actually do that for you. And the reason that people use them instead of drugs is because they're a lot safer than drugs, but it holds that both hemispheres in a certain place, in one of those places with the gamma or the delta or the theta state, to hold you in a place where your consciousness, which is not inside of you necessarily, consciousness is everywhere, but I learned to send my consciousness to other places. And that's another part of the trauma that I experienced. When I was having things done to me that shouldn't have been done to me, my consciousness would leave my body and try to get into the houses of the people next door. or when I am working like a homicide case or something, I could easily bilocate to where this happened. And of course, I was trained by the remote viewers, the US military psychic spies. And those men and women were so smart and so keen. And they started going to Monroe to actually get them into that state where they could have access to these altered states of consciousness without the use of drugs.
That's like my main thing. Like, it's easy to go to some facilitator and get into, a state of higher consciousness using, help from psychedelics, right? Like, I mean, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's like the easier route. Whereas opposed, like going there, like doing the work, getting yourself in these meditative states, changing your brain waves and working on that, over and over again, and then experiencing that. And then like, that's what I want. Like, I want to do the work to get there, because like just reading Mr. Monroe's books, like, one, he's a beautiful author. Like his words, the way that he creates sentences, like his stories. I mean, I'm like hooked the entire time. Like, I listen to it on Audible, and the guy who reads is very fantastic. And, but also, like, when you said Robert Monroe in your book, I was like, oh, here we go. This is what I'm talking about, because I've been trying to get both of my hemispheres, left and right brain, on the same level, in sync, so that way I can experience different levels of consciousness, or like explore the different dimensions like he talks about in his books. Now, did you experience that when you went to the Institute?
Oh my gosh. Well, a lot of it's in the book. The first part of the book is called Blind Sight, which is a medical term that means a blind person who has the ability to perceive a light source. So when we're growing up, that's what we're trying to do. We're navigating all the darkness, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're navigating what we have to fear and get through it. And it's sort of set a template. You know, there were a couple of murders in my hometown, very small town where, you know, nothing happened in the town except maybe a deer was run over or someone was drunk and backed into a mailbox. So when there were these murders, that took on a whole different spin. And there was a lot of stuff early in my childhood, which really set me up for this whole psychic thing. And of course, the trauma, you know, that I experienced with my mom. But the second half of the book is all about the healing of that trauma and then all the psychic stuff that started coming in. That's when we have to move that pain or that suffering or that trauma. And in respect of getting it out of our systems, then this divine light, this intervention of amazing psychic awareness and visions and prophecy and all of that stuff started coming in. And toward the end of the book is when I do talk about my experiences at Bob Monroe's Institute, which is the largest center for expanded states of awareness. Now, right now with COVID, they're doing online courses. But I do want to tell your listeners about what Tom Campbell is doing. Tom is continuing to do this same work, but he's developed his own binaural beats, which are different, of course, than the hemisync work. The hemisync often has guided meditations and music with it, but his are some Cadillac, hardcore, amazing binaural beats. And I've done some of the best remote viewing. The remote viewing.
What is that? What is that remote viewing? I've heard it a couple times.
Remote viewing was developed back in the 60s and 70s by a psychic named Ingo Swann at the Stanford Research Institute. This was when the CIA was working to utilize these psychic spies, and he developed a protocol, which I think would be really interesting for you, Trey. I'd like to see you take a course in this because I think you'd find it fascinating. Those of us who have these innate psychic skills are able to do it in a natural way, but controlled remote viewing is literally a specific, it's a specific way of allowing your subconscious to structure information and go to targets and get information about lots of different things. So that's controlled remote viewing. Then there's there are other, I don't want to spend my whole time talking about remote viewing, but it's very fascinating. But there's lots of ways to do it. But the point is, it's another way to access your subconscious and have it do stuff. There you go.
That sounds like fun. That's a pretty easy explanation.
But Tom Campbell's work right now, he's doing these deep immersives. I'd love to see you do this because it's like a 4-day course online, but you're doing it with him and you're doing it with another group of people in a Zoom because you're listening to the binaural beats with specific intent and then coming back in and talking about it. And I've accessed past lives doing this, remote viewing basically with a target in mind, and we figure out what the target is. But some of this stuff is really remarkable. So
talk about the past life regression in your book too, right? Like, yeah. I think you were with James Van Praagh or something like that. Like you were with him, and you guys were doing some past life stuff. Like, and you had a pretty interesting experience with that as well.
Well, one of the key persons in people in my life was Brian Weiss. Well, and he's the father of past life regressions. I mean, he basically is the man to go to remember the book, Many Lives, Many Masters?
Yeah.
Brian is the best-selling author of all of those books. And I was on a boat on the way to Ensenada, Mexico with James Van Praagh, who that's a whole nother incredible story. I mean, I don't believe in talking to the dead, and I end up being in James Van Praagh's house, but that's a whole nother story. But Brian Weiss regressed me. And I didn't believe in this crap. I was like, what is this? And it was a transformational, life-changing experience. unbelievable, because what it proved to me was that I chose to come back here.
You chose to come back as Marla? Is that what you
Well,
mean?
I didn't know my name was going to be Marla, but yeah, I chose to come back here. And I was remembering, I was like, oh crap, do I really want to do this? And I signed my papers begrudgingly, and I got here. But that is a fascinating story.
That is fascinating. I love past life regressions. Like I'll get it. Like, all right, so here's a story, right? So the other morning, I'm 4:30 in the morning. I usually get up and try to do this. Like I'll get into a meditative state and try to have a I don't know, like a viewing of a past life regression or something. And it's crazy. I think it's an amazing story. I'm sitting there on a horse in knight's armor or something, and I'm walking around this water, this pond, and there's an unbelievable castle. And I go up and across the bridge that goes over the pond or whatever, the moat, and I go in, and I'm now I'm this person. So now I'm as Trey, I'm this person riding this horse as a knight, I guess, or a king. And I come in, and there's this kid, and I'm I get off the horse, and I'm like, where's the king at? I need to speak to him. And the kid looks at me. He's like, you are the king. And then walks away with my horse. I'm and then I wake up. I'm like, shit, man, I could have had an amazing experience. I was a king.
Great. That's great.
I mean? And then I woke up, and then I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then I went back and tried to do it again. And then this time when I did it, it was 30 seconds of me as a woman who was a prisoner or something that was in some chamber with a window, and I could see outside, but I was scared to leave for some reason. And then I woke up again, and it was just man, this stuff's interesting. I'm hooked.
It is. It's fascinating. And I think it's about having the intention to do it. Mm-hmm. I like using binaural beats. I think it's a great way to get into that zone, but you don't necessarily need that. It's the intention to go in and access part of your database, so to speak, of a previous lifetime. Yeah.
Well, just like what Robert Moreau teaches, right? You go to sleep, he would do a couple of sleep cycles, wake up, and then he would go into his out-of-body experience because his brain was at that. When you're doing the binaural beats, you're trying to get your brain into that gamma theta range. And when you wake up, you're automatically in that because you were just in a REM sleep. Right. So when you come out of that, now your body hasn't kicked out of that yet. It takes a little bit for your brain to catch up to consciousness. So you come out of gamma, you're in theta, and then that's where, if you concentrate enough or try to be more aware, you can get these past life regressions when you wake up out of REM sleep. So I will just automatically wake up at 4:30, and then I'll just try to lay there and just kind of as I'm falling back asleep, I'll have these experiences, and it's insane. I love it.
I do too. And I think that for your listeners, one of the ways to make sure that you're at least paying attention is to have the intention when you go to sleep of being shown something that you need to see. Mm-hmm. I like to go, these times have been challenging on many levels, what's going on in our country. And of course, having to wrestle with COVID, and I live in Los Angeles, so you're in Baltimore. We have on different sides of the country, and we're all still dancing through it. Sure. We're all involved in it. And I like to have the intention when I go to sleep of, show me what I need to learn to be better in this situation. Show me something about a fear that I need to take a look at. Show me how I can feel better at this time because it's so challenging. And you know what's happening to me? I'm going into other lifetimes, not necessarily past life. It very well may be that I'm checking something out. I'm bilocating into someone else's body. I'm not Marla in the dream.
That's crazy. That's awesome. Have you gone into the future yet, of Marla?
Well, I'm looking at that. I'm wondering if some of this is future stuff.
Because Robert Moreau has done that. He's been able to go in the future.
Of course. Well, it's still in normal terms. I mean, I'm not off the planet or anything.
Yeah.
But one of the most remarkable things is, and I talk about this when you leave the body in death, you leave the issues that you had in life in the tissues. So your consciousness has memory of all of that, but it doesn't necessarily carry it around. And I remember jumping into this woman's body and I'm laughing. I'm like, I mean, I'm a tall, fairly slender or in fairly good shape woman at my age, but I jump into a really curvy woman with really big hair. And I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, wow, I feel amazing. I didn't have any of my Marla stuff. I didn't have any of my doubts about how I look or insecurities about my belly or anything like that. I was rocking it in this woman's body. And I found that so interesting, Trey.
That is interesting. Like, see, here's the thing. Like, I love your energy. Like, I just love your energy. Like, you have this feel about you. Like, I can tell you were very successful when you were acting, when you were in theater, when you're on stage. Like, you just have this commanding authority about you. And like, I can't see you jumping into another person's body and being any more, I don't know, like more alive than what you are right now. Like, you are, like, I just love the vibe you have.
Well, I'm grateful. I'm really grateful. I think despite what happens to any of us, we have to get up the next day and move ahead. But I'm one of those people that does wake up happy. I've been fortunate not to have many bad days.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, challenging, of course. I mean, we go through a lot of stuff, as you read in the book, but.
Well, the one thing I have to ask you about is Cuba. What were you thinking? Huh? Like you find this guy. This is my favorite story in the entire book. She finds this dude in a magazine or something like that, reaches out to him, and he replies back, and you meet him up, and like, does he buy your plane tickets at least to Jamaica? He buys you plane tickets?
Yes. He decided he wanted to take me on a date. Yes, this was back when Cosmopolitan had Cosmopolitan Bachelors of the Month. I wrote to a guy, and he responded, and he wanted to take me on a date to Jamaica. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you end up in Cuba, right? just because he was going there to free a guy that he knew in
just
prison.
Because he didn't tell me, and he hijacked me, basically.
This is like the older version of online dating. You know that, right? Like, this is a catfish tale of, back in the day. My man was, he might have been handsome. I mean, but man, Jamaica to Cuba, and then you get stuck in Cuba.
Yeah.
You have to go to the embassy to luckily somebody helped you out. Like, luckily somebody took you in and gave you some fresh clothes and said, we're getting you out. And you were able to get out.
Yeah. Well, for your listeners, there's a lot that went on in Cuba.
Well, they got to read the book. I'm not going to tell them on the show, because it's my favorite story in the entire book, by the way. I'm just what is this girl thinking? Like,
yeah, well, I wasn't, but, for the women that are listening, something had happened to me on my 21st birthday that I never really imagined. I was drugged and raped. And when you're drugged with Rohypnol, back then we didn't know what kind of drug it was, and I didn't go to the police because I was a witness to the rape, but I couldn't speak. So I'd been slipped a roofie, and I felt so guilty and so frightened, and I didn't have anyone to help me. I was in a new city. I'd left college and was singing with an opera company, and this all happened. And so my choices from that point on were not so great, meaning I chose to write to a Cosmopolitan Bachelor of the Month to expunge the memory of my 21st birthday. And that was not a real smart choice. That was jumping from the fire into a fire pan. But what it did for me is it made me understand standing up to people in a huge way, taking care of myself. But I am now a much wiser woman to assist other women
Sure.
who have some of the background that I did.
No, I agree. I mean, that is such a life lesson. I am not one to point fingers. I mean, when I was 21, I went to Thailand for a month and by myself, like just meeting up with some friends over there and had some life experiences over there as well. I mean, we do that, right? Like, I mean, it's just, we're kind of, I don't know. You and I are kind of like cut from the same cloth. I feel like we are,
You're that Leonardo DiCaprio guy that got the map for the beach.
you know, what's funny is that I went to that beach. I went to that beach. Yeah. I went to
God.
Yeah. I went to that beach.
Yeah.
It's called PP Island. My buddy, Den, shout out to him cause he took me there. We went Den, what's up, buddy?
Hey, Dan, buddy. I love that.
We went to South Thailand on a train that was like packed and we saw like elephants and the locals, and we went to this, I think it was like PP Island is the place that we went, and it was the actual beach that Leonardo DiCaprio was at.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had a hell of a time, but I mean, it reminded me of that. And it's like, kind of like, you know, you're 21, like you just, I don't know, you and I are the same person. Like we weren't scared of like putting yourselves out there and experiencing the world, right? Even though you ended up in Cuba and, you know, you had to get out through the embassy. You know, I went to Thailand and, you know, I had no clue what I was doing, but I was going there by myself to experience something, and we did, and we grew. And that's life, right? Like throw yourself in the fire, like you said.
It's amazing. I don't think that we would want I don't have children, but you do, but I don't think we would want our children running off to a place like that in these times. But we have the strength inside of our souls and our spirits that can help others. And you know, you have these wonderful kids, and my kids are my clients. So
that's awesome. I love that. My kids are my clients. Let me see my list here of things that I want to talk about with you, because I just love your story. Law enforcement, you're helping people out, you know, solve murders and crimes like that. Like, that's pretty intense. Like, so talk about that. Like, how do you, like, so I guess you reach out to, how does that even work? Like, do you reach out to the detectives? Do they reach out to you? I know you were on a TV show once.
Well, yeah. Okay. So I haven't been doing that for the last couple of years because of this book. You know, the book came out in 2018, and I've been on an ongoing book tour with it all around the country to various places that are in the book, and over to Europe too. And of course, I was continuing to extend this until COVID came. But what has happened around working for law enforcement is that you can't really just jump in and say, I'm going to work on this case. And I couldn't work with family members who were just too frightened or scared. Now, I have done that pro bono. I won't charge I won't charge families to do that, but I can't work for law enforcement unless they bring me in. But I won't work for a family unless the person is dead and they've been found and all of that, because it's just too tragic for them. And I don't want to impede any of the investigation. So I can work with a family after that. But you have to be invited. That's really the only way that I see this working for someone like me, because I've learned my lessons with this. So PIs would invite me, or remote viewing people that have had remote viewing groups and who were hooked up to the FBI, they would bring me in, or various law enforcement agencies. Because I live in Los Angeles, and there were places that I would just walk in and say, listen, this is what's been going on. If there's a cold case, you want me to look at it, I would, because they've got nothing else to lose, especially on a cold case. So I really loved it. However, it became an issue when I started tracking serial killers, or when we were working on ongoing investigations. And that's not the kind of stuff that you can put on television. That's one of the reasons that they don't have those shows with psychics like Medium anymore. The actual cases are so dicey, and if they're ongoing, you just can't be involved. You can't tell anybody about anything. And so the ones that I worked on were cold cases, most of them that I can even talk about. And, it's not about solving the case either, Trey. It was always about assisting the investigation. And that's, you become really effective when you are approaching it from that way. So you don't have the pressure of, oh, I have to find, Jack Smith as the perpetrator. And it wasn't about really finding bodies, although I've given information to FBI internal people, and 4 years later, they would send me the place that I had drawn for them. And it was the actual place where the perpetrator had been, or where the bodies were buried. But, I'm not going to wait around 4 years to get my feedback on that.
I wouldn't.
You just do the job. You do your job.
Yeah, you do the job and move on. Your gift is incredible. So now a psychic and a medium are two different things, right? Like a medium can speak with the deceased. Psychic can see is that connected to the future? Is that how it is?
Okay. Well, one of the reasons I used the term psychic on the book, calling the book American Psychic, was I wanted the terminology to be out there, because I was a radio host for Whitley Strieber's UnknownCountry.com's Dreamland, which was one of the most fascinating paranormal shows, along with Coast to Coast in the country. I did that from probably 2007 until 2013. And then I came back about my book in the last couple of years. But that dynamic was, it was experimenting with so many incredible conversations around all of this. And when I would get someone on the air that had written a book who was a psychic, I'd basically say to them, well, let's talk about your psychic abilities. They go, oh, don't call it psychic, call it intuitive, call it clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient. And I'm like, oh my God, all the clairs. They didn't want to face what that word was, which is really not a bugaboo. It's just that somebody, put it on a neon sign and stuck it in front of a crystal ball. It's the word psychic is literally psychic functioning. It is what is the functioning of the brain, the heart, the matter, the spirit that is able to go beyond what physical matter reality can do. It is mediumship, it's clairvoyance, it's clairaudience, it's all the clairs. It is precognition, the precogs, like in Minority Report. It's all of that stuff. It's being able to do this. So psychic is the thing that we really have to find a way, even scientifically, which is what I've been working on for the last 10 years, to embrace this understanding that we are all capable of sending our consciousness and tapping into the databases of all of the information that has been here and is still here. So psychic is that. The mediumship part is still part of psychic, but it is different in the sense that it is actually tapping into the database or accessing deceased loved ones.
So can you channel, like what Paul Selig does? Can you channel the guides?
Well, you know what? I made a decision a long time ago because I was channeling a number of things when I was first developing these abilities. And it's called trance channeling, when you allow another energy or an entity to speak, like Jane Roberts did with Seth. I didn't like not being necessarily aware of me, although Paul has been grounding himself. He's a large man, so he grounds himself in his ability to hear consciousness and be able to repeat it. But I'm constantly doing that, but I'm not doing it as like I'm hearing something right now, and then will repeat, well, I'm hearing something right now. You know, that's how Paul works. He repeats that. And he's a really wonderful teacher and great channel for that. But channeling, it's just a way of listening, Trey. And I think that that's one of the reasons, you know, I worked as an actress for 25 years. I stopped in 2002, but that's part of the gift of what acting is. It's listening, because a good actor is responding to what they're hearing in the most authentic way that their character that they've created is responding. So it's listening. And you actually have that ability. I see you. I'm not saying I see you in the shower, but I can see that in the shower, it's one of the greatest places when you're in the download space to have that water hitting your head where you're getting tons of stuff all the time. And I see you sitting outside in a particular chair while the sun goes down. If you're alone, you have a really wonderful way of hooking in, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know,
The shower is, it's crazy because it's a lot, you know, like you don't know what's right, what's wrong, it's just a lot. Like my shower is where I get a lot of feedback, and I try to channel to my higher self.
Yeah.
You know what Robert Moreau talks about, the I out there, like all the past lives that he was.
Yes.
I try to do that. Like I really try to. Like I'll envision myself, I'll close my eyes and I'll envision myself climbing up on a desk and like shouting nonverbal communication to these myself out there and say like, what is it that I need to do next? Like, what is it? Like, what is it do I need to do to connect the dots? And like, I'll just keep hearing, even when I'm on a run, I'll hear, you need to go inside. Like you need to go inside. And I don't know how to do that. Like I continuously ask people, I'm like, especially you, I'm like, how do you go inside, man? Like I sit down and I meditate and I try to go inside. I think
it's a lot easier than that. It's not, I do. I really do. When you're quiet and you're in the shower, you just listen. And that higher self of yours is downloading information to you. You know, you got to get a notebook. Make sure you get some. I have tons of legal yellow pads.
But can you connect to that? Like when do you know that's your higher self? Do you know that's who's talking to you? Because I hear a lot of different, like I hear voices that aren't mine.
Well, that's fine. I don't even worry about that. You're training yourself to listen. Mm-hmm. What I think is really good is to be able to sit down when you're quiet, and instead of necessarily going into a meditation, start to write. And some people call it automatic writing. I don't even like to do that because I'm basically connected to the information. I'm in the conversation. So I start writing about, oh, I'm so grateful that this happened today. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to Trey on his show. Show me what you want me to know.
Yeah.
What do you want me to know? And then I'll hear something like, well, you really need to go to blah, 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 blah. And you need to pick up this and you need a light for this, or I really want to hear you talking about such and such. And I'm like, just writing it down. I'm trying not to have any attachment to the information. I mean, that was one of the reasons I got divorced, because I was so busy in that relationship, because there was so much turmoil that had happened in my marriage that I was constantly worried, and I was always asking about what to do and how to help what was going on. Mm-hmm. And I was being given information. I didn't like the information, but I took it down because that was my lifeline.
I love that.
Just tumultuous times, and you know, we are in situations for various reasons, and I had to learn a lot in that situation, but I was constantly asking for help. And that's one of the things that we're always doing. You know, we're taught through organized religion to reach out and to pray, and I'm actually involved in touching source by talking to this larger consciousness system that you can call God, or, you know, I have a lot of names for it in the book, right? Sure. So just trusting that I'm going to be given best information for my highest good, or when I work with someone for their highest good.
I love that. I love that. I think God is like, I'm learning more so. Like God is a state of being. Like God is I don't know, like just all encompassing awareness of like unity, of consciousness, of just love, joy, all of that, right? Like I'm feeling like the more that I awaken, the more that I like, you know, what's so funny is today I took a picture of, I love sunrises, sunsets when I can, sunrises. And you're probably seeing that when I go run early in the morning. I'll always take a sunrise picture. I'll stand there and I'll watch it, and I'll just talk to God, or I'll talk to my true self. I'll talk to, whoever's listening. And this morning I'm like running and I'm listening to these, this inspirational music. And like, I'm just like, show me am I doing the right things? Am I doing what I need to be doing for my growth? And I'm just like, fighting, running. Cause I'll run 4 miles, and it just feels like I'm shedding things off my soul. Like I'm just shedding the filth, the dirt, the just whatever, and just purifying myself. And I post a picture of me standing behind a miraculous sunrise. And I'm like, if you want to find God, go for a run. And my buddy, my cousin, he comments on my picture. He says, the number 444 stands for something. I'm like, what are you talking about, 444? I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, I think it was either the mile or the distance or the time or something was like 444. And he was like, look it up. And I look it up, and online it says, 444 stands for, like, if it keeps popping up or shows itself, it's saying that your angel or your truer self is telling you that you're on the right path.
How fun. Good.
Wow. I'm like, wow. Like, I'm just like mind blown when I read that, because like, things, like you were talking about listening, right? Like listening to the signs. I don't do enough of that. Like I get too much in my mind, and I'll just start, just trying to control too much, and then I won't listen.
I understand. This is, we've been living in dicey times, and control seems to be an issue that we're all having to look at. Whether we feel controlled, whether we think that we're doing something for others. Masks have been a very interesting conversation. Some people don't want to wear masks, and I'm all about whatever is best for myself and others. And I don't mind doing something to help someone else, if that will give them a psychological support, or if it really is protecting myself. Be really curious over the next couple of months during the holidays if we don't get flus the way we used to, if we're wearing masks,
Sure.
If we're protecting ourselves in that way. I just, I didn't ever want or think that should be politicized. So when I'm up, I'm not running at 5:30 in the morning, but I am hiking. And are you on Instagram? Because we should probably be sharing. We should be sharing photographs with each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you'll see where we are in that conversation. I think it's starting the day or ending the day is a prayerful experience of showing up for God, the universe, showing up for consciousness, and saying, you know what, you put me here at this time, at this place, to be here for this right here, right now. And I'm going to show up. And that's what you're doing. And you have a passion. You said something very smart, Trey. I'm glad you noticed that. We are similar, like brother, sister, and I'm a few years older than you, but that dynamic.
Not much.
Yeah, we'll talk later. But that dynamic of, being passionate to explore, being passionate to bring something in, whether it is information from a higher source, or get people to commune for their greatest good. As you said, a source of higher consciousness. This is what you talk about, being woke. We're all trying to get woke. or this larger conscious system is going to make us woke.
Yeah.
You don't get
I agree with that for sure.
you don't get a bunch of plagues and an ongoing rapture without getting woke.
That's another thing too. Like I've been like dabbling with the idea. Like, do you believe that we can create? Like, I mean, obviously we would create our own consciousness, like right here, right now. But like, do you think, like, you know, I was talking about Joe's work earlier.
Mhm.
Do you think like that we can, with our thoughts, like alter our realities if we like continuously, like, you know, link our mind and our emotion together to, you know, focus in on something? Do you think we
Yes.
can change it? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I think that you should look up Lynn McTaggart's work. Lynn McTaggart and her intention work and the power of 8. It literally is, when I talk about, when I work with somebody, I'm basically asking people to meditate, pray, intention, information for your highest good. When you're intentioning something for your highest good, that supersedes what your ego needs and wants. Today I was working with someone who basically needed to communicate with their mother, and I brought the mother in, and the mother had a lot of really important information to say, but it had linked with him for so long that he was his mother's conduit for her emotional life, and he wanted to move on and have his own relationship. And that's exactly what I brought in. I talked about all of that aspect because he needed to be happy. He needed to have his own life. And what happened was he was really pissed because it's not what he wanted, but it was exactly what he needed, right? So I'm not marketing myself like, you know, you're not going to get what you want, but you're going to get what you need.
I love that. But
I can't market
that's
myself.
life, though. That's life. You're not gonna get what you want, but you're gonna get what you need. Like every time we reincarnate, right? Like you're not gonna get what you want, but you're gonna get what you need.
Well, isn't that the truth? I mean, and I'm always telling my clients and my friends, be happy in this vehicle, love this vehicle, take care of this vehicle, you know, the very best you can, because you might not come back so cute the next time around.
Oh, it's awesome. Where do you like? What is your goal? Like, I mean, you want to bring more awareness, you want to bring happiness, you want to help others out, but like, where do you see yourself? Like, next 5 years? Like, where do you want to go?
Wow. Well, the book has had many layers, meaning what it's done out there in the consciousness and who it's brought into my life. It is a constant reflection that my life is actually having the kind of meaning that I wanted it to have. You know, when you work as an actress for so many years, and I did that because if I could get into that television set in the corner of the room that my mother watched all the time, maybe she'd love me and not hurt me. So at a very young age, I thought, I'm going right into that television set. And maybe that'll make us have a relationship that will work. Well, it didn't, the way that normal people would say that you have a relationship. But it taught me so much because my heart was to help heal my family. And in turn, I healed myself. You know, we can't really fix necessarily other people. We want to, but we can't. We have to do the best we can. So when you ask about a goal, what we're doing right now and how we're speaking and what this could do for other people is the best that I can do right now. And if that moves into more people or being on panels and discussing things, which I think that I always have an interesting twist. You know, I'm not always invited to dinner parties anymore.
Why?
Because
COVID.
I do. It's like, oh my God, don't bring her. You know, it's like with my husband. I thought that you were going to learn things about me. Well, I did. So we're no longer married, you know? So.
That's amazing.
So, Yeah, but
What was I going to say?
it's about being the best we can be and sharing it with others and giving people the opportunity to grow up in love, because that's why we're here, you know.
To love, right? To love. But you got to love yourself. Like you got to love that's what I'm learning as well. Is like, you got to love yourself as much as you can. Even the bad stuff, even the stuff that you want to hide, like the shadowy, stuff's in the shadow, in the closet. Like you got to love that stuff too. Like in order for you to love another person the way that you think that you love them, like you got to love yourself that much more,
Right.
And then living in the moment, like you're talking about, like right now, like I don't even know why I asked that question. What do you want to do in 5 years? Like, you can't do anything about the future. You're in the moment. Like I always preach that. Like be in the moment. Right now is eternity. Right now is eternity if you focus in on it. Like if you allow the ego to jump in and make you think about what you haven't done, what you're not good enough for, it steals the moment away. And it doesn't allow you to be 100% here, because this is where you have the most impact. This is where action takes
You're right
place.
now. Right. Well, but some of the things that happen, and this is what happened to me, I was so wounded. So we've got a lot of wounded people out there based on how they were raised, the conversations in their heads about how you're not enough, how you're not smart enough, pretty enough. You'll never do this, you'll never do that, which are all the projections from our unwell family dynamics. My father was an alcoholic. Although he was a sweet man, I was always waiting for something from him. And I adored him, but he lived in an altered reality after coming back from World War II. And my mother was just crazy. So her dynamic was me just surviving her. So I remember saying in the book that I prayed for anybody to rescue me, even aliens in a spaceship. I wanted to get away. But this is how we learn. We have these very difficult outside forces that are teaching us stuff. And, there's an awful lot of hate going on in our country right now that has been taught. We are not born to hate.
No, not at all. I think, and Paul Selig says this too a lot. He's like, what you damns you back. And I think you're seeing a lot of damning going on right now.
Yeah. Yes.
And you're damning the world, and the world is damning you back. But a lot of that has to come to light, right? Like, I think you're seeing a major shift in consciousness. Like I talk about this a lot on the show, where you had like the industrial revolution, you had the agricultural revolution. I think you're going to see like a conscious revolution. Like you're going to see a consciousness awareness of the masses. And you're going to see change in people. I think I'm seeing it now. I talk to people all the time that are more open to speaking about past life regressions.
Well, I'd like to go back to what you were saying about being here now, being present now. So when we have these historical woundings, we've got to clean it up somehow. If you were taught to hate people that were green, and you have to work with people who are green, and you have those old tapes inside your brain about these people who are green, you continue to act out of that. And you have to clean that up yourself. I had to go through my own revelation of understanding what I was taught by my parents about hating green people. And I had to clean that up, because that didn't go with my narrative in this world. It did not work for me as a child when green people were working for us. And I thought, those green people don't want to be working for us. What's going on here? And exploring what that was about. And so in being so deeply sensitive to power struggles and all of that stuff. So while we're here now and we have stuff that we don't like about our lives, we have to kind of like look at how that got created. And
but if you don't, if you're not awoke, if you're not,
you got to get,
you got to awaken to that, right? Like you got to have something.
Be aware. You have to be aware to it. And that's the thing. You cannot change anything, Trey, that you're not aware of. And people don't want to be aware of things certain times in their lives. They don't want to hear it. They defend themselves. They'll defend themselves into the death to be right about something. When in fact, whoa. If you die, you got to recycle. And remember, you might not come back so cute. So,
man, I love it.
So being present in the now, we can change everything now. If I get something and I read it and I don't like it and there's something that triggers me, I have the wherewithal now at my age, after going through everything, to go, wow, you're really getting triggered by this, Marla. You know, I'm starting to sweat or I'm starting to shake. And well, why is that? Oh, that's how my mother used to speak to me. She would get in my face and she would criticize me. She would yell at me. She would make me feel shitty. Am I allowed to say that word?
You can say whatever you want.
Okay.
You're Marla Freeze. You can say whatever the fuck you want.
Oh, Trey, I love you. Thank you so much. Yay, my big brother. Okay, so that whole thing, and you have to realize that that's a way that you've thought for so long. So when somebody says you're wrong, you're this, you're that, you're this, no, stop for a minute. I'm reacting like, oh my God, that sounds just like my mother.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go down that road. You don't look like her. You might sound like her. That's something I have to fix inside of me.
And you have to fix it. Yeah, you got to fix it.
I got to fix it inside of me. If you tell me, Marla, you know, you have an attitude about green people. If I trust you enough, I better look at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, when Paul talks about what he just talks about, well, we have a history in our country. We have a history that's going on. And I got to tell you, the forefathers, the people that have gone before us, our fathers, our mothers, our grandparents, their consciousness calls beyond the grave to try and get us to say, well, we couldn't do it. You guys have to love what we couldn't. You have to like what we hated. Mm-hmm. You have to be aware of what we were intolerant of and change it.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. That's like, but how do you do that? Like, how do you get,
you become aware. You become aware.
You become aware, but people can only love as much as they're able to, right? Or like, I remember, let's see, you know, the great generation of men, right? Like their sons, their sons and daughters suffered because they didn't know how to love them. They loved them without a doubt, but like talking to them about that, like for me, I'm laying on the couch with my son and I'm stroking his hair. He's 10 years old. And I'm just like, I love you, buddy, and give him a kiss. And like, not that my dad didn't do that, but it was like, maybe he didn't know how to do that. Right. Like,
I completely understand. You know, in the book, there's a situation where my father's hugging me and he never really hugged me like that. He was so frightened. At that moment, he realized, you know, he knew a piece of information about that girl down in the valley where our farm was, that she had been raped and murdered. And he knew that. And he didn't even know that I knew her. And he was hugging me and saying, this terrible thing happened, a girl down in the valley. And I was like, oh my God, he had no idea that I'd been spending the last 2 weeks with her. But he was so frightened that something like that could happen to his own daughter, that I saw my father like that day, like I'd never seen him before. And it broke him apart. And I didn't know that he even thought those things of me, or that he loved me. And, you know, he showed me different ways the way he loved me. And now our generation, you know, our children's generation, are able to show their children love in different and more affirming ways that makes their soul and their spirit strong. A daughter who has a father that loves her can basically do anything. A daughter that has a mother who doesn't love her is always struggling to be enough. So I have that very interesting dynamic, you know, and I'm very much aware of it. So with awareness, we can change it.
With awareness.
At this time, at this place in our lives right now, you and me, we're enough. We're having a conversation with each other that is honoring our path, where we are, and wherever we're going. And hopefully your listeners will go on that ride with us.
hear this, accept it, and become more aware. Like, be more curious
Yes.
about what you
My
are.
favorite word. Oh, give me 10 on that. That is my favorite word. That's what I tell people. When people want to know how to become more psychic, I always tell them, look, you have to pay attention to how you think. You have to know how you think. And I, on Facebook, I just got people talking about how many times a week they lie to themselves, even a day. When you start paying attention to how you think, then you can change it. So instead of trying to defend being right or you're this and you're that and blah, 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 be curious about how you could be wrong. Be curious about how you could be wrong. Be curious about learning something new.
Yeah, I mean, and how much of that is ego too, right? Like I could never admit that I was wrong before. Like I could never, even if I was wrong and noticed it in the middle of an argument that I was wrong, I would never admit it. But like I would never do that.
And now you can.
But I can now. Yeah. I can for sure do that now. Like I even stand back and just kind of like, like I'll see, like, so my philosophy now is God is everything. God is everything. Like even fear, God is everything. God's love and God's everything. And so like I'll sit there and when I feel my emotions, like I try not to be my emotions. I feel them, but I try not to be them. And I consider it a test from God. Whatever situation I'm in, whatever moment that I'm in, like if I because you said the fire, right? Like I am an emotional dude. I wear my heart on my sleeve. Like I'm very passionate about things. And if I feel that come up, I'm like, this is just a test. Like God's testing you right now. Like he's literally letting you, because things repeat itself. Like this won't be the last time you feel this, but he's trying to see how you react and what are you going to do?
Well, consciousness is a miraculous thing. And that is this communication that we're having on this computer. This computer's like God. And we're the players of our own avatars. We don't really exist without this consciousness, which is the computer. And the computer isn't fun and it doesn't do anything without us.
I love it. Well, think about who built the computer, right? God built it, right? Some dude built it, right? Or, you know what I mean? Somebody had to make the computer or the machine that made the laptop. So ultimately God made it. Marla, I can talk to you all night. Seriously, you're the best. How can people connect with you?
Well, I have two websites that interact with each other. The Marla Frees, FREES.com, and you can go to the contact form and fill that out. Or if you're really interested in what's been going on with the book, and you can buy the Audible, which just came out a month ago, actually. So I have it on Audible and.
Do you read that?
Kindle, yes, I do.
Oh, man, I can only imagine how good that is.
Yeah, the Cuba story. It's quite good.
The Cuba.
Audible and Kindle and paperback, and that's AmericanPsychicBook.com.
That's awesome. The Cuban Missile Crisis is actually trying to get Marla Frees out of Cuba. You didn't know that?
Well, a different kind of missile. Thank you, Trey. This has been just delightful. You're wonderful, and I'm so glad to meet you. Thank you.
Marla, thank you so much. This has been amazing. I want to say thank you to Marla for joining the show. I want to say thank you to you, the listener, for hanging out. Please go to yoursuperiorself.com. Leave me a message. Let me know what you guys are up to. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and I will talk to you later.